So why don't we start? When you see me looking at my phone, it's not that I'm checking texts. I actually have my interview on here. It's easier than cards. So why don't we start at the beginning,
Okay.
which is being a kid
Yes.
and growing up in Jefferson Park
Yes.
in South Central.
Yes.
What kind of a kid were you?
I was a very independent kid, rambunctious maybe. If you let my mom tell it though. But I was just always very curious and inquisitive as a kid. An avid reader, always wanting to learn and just figure out what life was about and wanting to meet people and connect very early.
You grew up with your grandma, right?
Yeah, I was raised by my mom's mom.
Yep.
Yeah, and I lived with her till I was 15 years old. Then I went to go live with my dad's mom.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of childhood was that though? Like you're growing up with your grandma. What life lessons did you get from her that remain with you today?
Well, a lot of people would say, I guess, like especially like my family members and friends. My grandmother really gave me my heart, my capacity to like love and give and want to see others do well and kind of share in the things that I have. We didn't grow up with a lot of money or resources, but we had a lot of love, and anything that we had as a family, my grandmother was very open and quick to share with family, friends, strangers, and basically that's the most important lesson that I learned from her is just to give. Even if you don't have a lot, there's still some to give.
You said you were very inquisitive and you read a lot. What's your first musical memory?
Oh, my first musical memory would be "I Like" by Guy. That was the first song I knew all the words to by heart. I think I was like 3.
3.
Yeah.
Wow, you learned early.
Yeah, so I knew a lot of songs like by heart. Like I loved to learn the lyrics and.
What was it about lyrics? What was it about the poetry of lyrics that got you?
I've always just had an affinity for words. I think language is so important, and to have, a great scope and being able to manipulate, the English language or any language is really important when it comes to expressing yourself. So, from reading, and even though I was outgoing and talkative, I wasn't very forward with my emotions. So I was able to express myself very early through poetry and then later through music.
When did you start writing yourself?
Music or poetry?
Poetry.
I started writing poetry when I was about 7 or 8 years old.
What were you writing about?
I can't remember. I was writing about everything because, and I would give a lot of my teachers growing up. They saw, something in me very early, and they always encouraged my writing. So I'll be honest, I stopped doing homework at home when I was like 8 years old. It started to take too long, and I like to play outside, so I would spend a lot of time with the teachers during lunchtime. I would get my recess, but I would always have to spend my lunch with the teachers making up homework. So my third grade teacher, Mrs. Heath, she would just be like, all right, I see you're writing poetry, you enjoy that, so if you write poetry, that'll stand in for the homework. And
Wow.
You don't have to do the writing prompts, just kind of write what you're feeling. So I was writing about a lot of things, basketball, because I was playing basketball then, my friends. My father, he was like in and out of jail when I was growing up, so that was a big subject for me, and just kind of working through those emotions very young.
How did you do that when you're saying you've got to deal with something that as a young kid has got to be difficult, working through those emotions in writing? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was difficult because I feel like in my environment, it's not a really unique experience for the father to not be in the home, but there were families that where the father was present, or different events. So you think like daddy daughter day, and these things that were like kind of reminders of like, okay, there is a kind of void there for me that I'm missing, but instead of maybe internalizing the anger or the confusion I was feeling, through poetry and then later through my actual music, I was able to kind of express myself, you know, and I feel like I saved some money in therapy.
So using that as a method of working through stuff instead of acting out.
Yeah, I acted out a little bit too.
You did too?
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to push you on that unless you want to tell us something.
Just a little bit. I mean, you know, I was like any other kid. One of the most, I guess, profound memories I have of me acting out. It was a time my dad, he had got out, and I was doing music at this time. This is really, and then I guess we could go in this. This is like where I got bit by the bug a little bit. So my dad, he was home, and I briefed you on not doing the homework. So
how old were you?
I'm 11 years old.
Okay.
And I was taking a creative writing class, and so I was doing great in the class, but I wasn't doing the homework. So the teacher was like, "All right, if you perform some of your poetry at the poetry reading, then I'll give you an A in the class." And I'm like, okay, so I agreed to it just immediately. But then, like, you know, it's like 2 weeks out, and I'm starting to think about it, and I'm like, I don't want to share my poetry with these kids. You know, it's going to be my peers there and their parents. And I'm like, nah. So I go to the teacher, and I'm like, well, can I write a rap instead? Because rap is cool. And she's like, yeah, you can write a rap instead. So I wrote my first rap for the poetry reading. And then my dad was there. My rap, it was called God's Got a Plan. And I can't remember what it was about. It was terrible, but it was about God, so everybody clapped, and they yelled encore. And, like, it was at that moment where I was like, okay, I really like performing. Maybe my writing is kind of good, and now I just want to be good at this. And so that's when I really started taking the musical aspect of my writing very serious. But within that next few months, like, you know, my daddy comes to, like, open house, all that, but then he ended up being incarcerated again. And so, like, one of the teachers one time was like, you know, you're not doing well in class anymore. I'm going to call your dad. I said, well, call him.
Good luck. Yeah.
So that was, like, one of the times where I was acting out. Kind of just, I didn't do well that semester. I've always done really well in school. It's been really easy for me. But I just, you know, of course, I was disappointed and kind of dealing with that. But they had no idea because they had just, you know, met him. And he's very charismatic, so he just came through just winning everybody over.
Sure.
And then, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was one of the acting out moments.
It's always interesting, I think, when kids are having a tough time at school, you know, for whatever reason, if, you know, parents are messing up or not around or whatever, the teachers don't really know what's going on, do they?
Yeah.
Unless somebody actually tells them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when you said you got the bug,
yeah,
what did that mean to you? What did you decide that you were going to do? Because you started doing battle raps, right?
Yeah, well, it was then that I wanted to be the best rapper possible. Like, it was like at that moment, I wanted to perform. I wanted everybody to say I was dope or think I was good or the best. So from there, even though I was like, I mean, I knew I had something, but I didn't feel like completely confident. And then especially with battle rapping, which I did later, which I started, you know, two or 3 years after that, you have to be prepared. So I started writing every single day. I was writing raps every day. I was writing raps on everything: homework, toilet paper, envelopes, everything, notebooks, and I was just constantly trying to build that muscle, you know?
Were you being encouraged by anybody along the way?
Yeah, all of my cousins and teachers, every one of my English teachers was just like, yeah, go, you know? So it was a lot of support from, like, friends in school, especially once I started to put myself out there, and I kind of had to create the battle culture in my space, in my school, because battle is not really something that's natural to, like, West Coast hip hop. We focus on more like grooves and song and funk, you know, so it's like, make a good song that we could dance to. But I got really into battling, watching, you know, East Coast battle raps, and they had this thing called Smack DVD back then, and, you know, like, battle rap has seen an emergence again, like, recently, but it was, like, unheard of. So I literally had to make the kids come to school early to rap with me. you know, and then like teach them how I went, and then tell them to work to get good so they could battle me, so then I could get good, and so like I just had to make it work.
Did you find any resistance within that community, the battle rap community, or were you welcomed into it?
There was always one hater. Not everybody else was cool. Once I like demonstrated my ability, but there's always that one guy. You a girl, you good for a girl. I'm like, bro, I'm better than you on any day of the week. Like, you know, like you're good for a dog, maybe, you know. But there's always that one guy who wants to downplay it because I'm a woman.
Sure.
Then like a girl. I remember I battled this guy at a barber shop. I'm 15 years old. One of my cousin's friends, he's like, oh, we're gonna go battle, and then I don't know if we're gonna battle for some money or whatever. So they take me in this barber shop. It's like all these guys there, you know, and they're looking at me like I'm gonna battle her. The guy's like
that little girl.
Like, yeah, so I like rip him, and he wants to fight me.
Right.
Like this is like a grown man, literally like they're like carrying me out of the barber shop because this grown man wants to fight me. And I'm like, so there's been instances like that. Definitely there's been, it could get embarrassing. I've never lost a battle, by the way. I just want to be clear with everyone here. All right.
What's the greatest thing you learned from those days, moving forward as an artist? What did it give you?
Hunger, passion. It just put that fire in me, you know. There's a certain amount of fearlessness you have to have because a lot of times, you know, you might come with your crew or your friends, but a lot of times you go into uncharted territory, you know, enemy territory almost even. So you'll have someone who believes in their person in the same way your people believe in you. And because there's so much of that energy and you know, that push and pull, you have to really just not be scared. But it also taught me to take my craft very seriously. Like, I didn't rap a word to anyone until I knew nobody could see me. I didn't do that because I didn't want to take any L's.
So what age were you when this was going down?
I battle rapped from like 15 to like about 19.
Okay, and along the way you started getting a reputation.
Oh yeah.
People started taking notice.
Uh-huh.
And you had a couple of mentors enter your life as well, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, one of my first mentors, I mean, is actually one of my family members. My aunt, she was signed to Snoop Dogg when I was 13. And she was really like my first example of, you know, I can not only be in the music industry, but it's a viable career, and if I work hard enough, it's gonna happen. Like, I went from watching her write raps in my grandmother's house to being on Tigger's The Basement on BET, like, in 6 months.
Who's your aunt?
Her name is Cognac. She's in a group called Doggy's Angels. So I guess that was like my first indirect mentor, because she would like let me and my uncle write raps to like her old beat tapes. They were tapes back then. But I had like Battle Cat Beats, which is like Snoop Dogg's producer and all that. So then around that time, I was also able to meet Snoop, but I didn't tell him I rapped yet. And then later, you know, maybe a couple years after that is when I met Usher and then Teddy Riley. So
when you met those guys, you're meeting some people who are very well known, obviously, but also really respected.
Yes.
As producers in particular. What did you learn from that? Because I know around about that time you had the opportunity to do a record deal, but you chose not to do it, right?
Yeah, I ended up, well, initially, how that came about was Usher was the first person to ever offer me a record deal. I battled his dancer, Fly, at the rehearsal for the Yeah video shoot. And then I don't know if you guys remember the Confessions album and Yeah, and that was like the biggest album of his career. So he didn't really just have like the label in place. It just was no structure there. Because honestly, I think then that's probably a deal I might have done. You know, when I think back in hindsight, because that's where my mind was and what I wanted to do. But because it wasn't in place, what it did was build my buzz within the industry. And so I was able to shop, you know, my demo at the time. That's so weird because you don't do that anymore. You don't shop your demo. You don't do anything. But Teddy Riley actually put together my demo that I shopped. And just working with Teddy Riley is just amazing. I mean, you know, of course, he's changed musical history, working with Michael Jackson, creating New Jack Swing. And I just remember how excited I was that he liked my stuff and he was willing to help me with it. The biggest lesson I think I learned from that is that, you know, still, like, you're never too big to give back or pay it forward. You know, he's always been there if I had any questions or needed any help with anything in music and personally. So.
Now, I know around about this time you made a decision to go to school.
Yes.
And very smartly went for business.
Yes.
What did you major in?
I went to Northridge, and I majored in business administration with an emphasis in marketing, and double majored in Pan-African studies.
And while you were doing that, you were sort of honing your songwriting skills as well, right?
Yeah, I was writing songs. By the time I was in my first semester of college, I had already written my first EP, which I wrote for Lil Fizz from B2K. He had just went solo. B2K is back, by the way. That's tight.
When did you start working with other people, writing with other people?
I started like writing with other people, I think 2007, 2008, working on like Snoop Dogg's Ego Trippin' album. I worked on that with Teddy Riley and Terrace Martin and DJ Quick. So
what were you doing when you say you're working on that? Are you helping write songs? Are you actually writing songs? Are you sort of collaborating?
Well, for that album, for the songs that I placed, I wrote the entire things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that obviously then sort of enabled you to start working with other people, because everyone's
did.
like, hey, she wrote those songs,
Yeah.
and then you start getting calls.
Yeah. No, it kind of grew from there. Of course, it was still like, you know, you still have to hustle like anything else, but that was like my first major placements. Having 2 songs with Snoop Dogg is definitely like a big thing.
Yeah.
One of the songs I did was with Charlie Wilson. So they actually played that on American Idol. Like Snoop performed that on American Idol with Charlie Wilson, which is like really, like a really dope moment for me. That was like one of my first moments.
Absolutely.
You know,
so going from working with him, I got a list of people here that you've worked with. I'm going to just say a few of them.
Okay.
Pharrell,
Yes.
Puffy, Ty Dolla $ign, Timbaland, Kanye, Nicki Minaj, Meek Mill, T.I., Snoop. I've interviewed a couple of those guys. I've actually spent some time with Snoop.
Who's your favorite?
I think Snoop.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I enjoyed talking to T.I., but Snoop is probably one of the coolest men I've ever met.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
And I don't know about you. You know, I don't come from that community. I'm a little older than you, and I'm
just a little bit.
I'm a white guy from Birmingham in England, right? So I don't think Snoop was thinking of me when he was writing. But the one thing that I learned from talking to, I was petrified to interview him. They were talking about it for 2 years. Oh, we're going to do Snoop. And I was like, oh, no, God, what am I going to do then? But what I found is that when you sit down and you engage any artist on their level about their creativity and what they're trying to say and what they're trying to do, people respond. And we're all the same at the end of the day. We just want to be respected for what we're making and what we're creating. So I guess my question about that, with all of these people that you've worked with through the years, do you have I don't want to say formula, but do you have a method and a strategy when you sit down with somebody about what you're going to do, or is it different every time?
No, I do have a formula, and what I've been kind of known, I guess, to be or tapped in for. For me, it's just about learning who you are. Like the same way we're having this conversation, I've had these type of conversations with each one of those people, and trying to tap in on a level that's deeper than what's your next radio hit or whatever. Like I know that's important, you know, to get singles. Like, but for me, I always just wanted to make the realest record. I want to do something that you can't do with someone else, and I want it to matter to you and mean something, you know, in the long run, because I feel like those are the records that change people's lives. And whether it's a #1 or, you know, top 20 hit, it's going to be a song that they listen to forever. So, like, for me, it's always important to make the song that's going to help somebody come out of something. I don't like to do anything that anybody else does. So I feel like you can't write about anything new. Everything under the sun has been written about, but you can create a unique perspective. You know, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I firmly believe in that.
Can you take us through maybe just an overview of when you sit down and meet somebody for the first time, what that is? I mean, maybe just pick one of the people I've mentioned and talk about how you met them the first time and how that conversation goes to the point where you start actually writing.
Okay, let me see who I could pick from that list. I don't. I guess because the one I have the most interaction with is Puff, but Puff's easy. I don't want to. All right, so with like Snoop, we'll do Snoop because he was the first one. We were just like in the studio. He played me his music, like what he had already, and then we kind of just talked about like where he was at that point in his life, you know. So we're vibing, and this is happening over a few days. It's not like, all right, we're gonna work, we're gonna do a session, and then we're gonna just crank it out, and it's gonna happen today. I'm like, nah, like, well, what's going on? Well, let me hear the music. What's happening with the family? What about it? And at that time, he was like starting to. We talked about the many, you know, reinventions he's had over the course of his career, but he was really trying to lean towards being more geared towards, you know, like a family man, and like the stress that up until then, you know, just being in this industry puts on that. So, and coming away from like being this big gangbanger and having that image and trying to do something that was more positive. So the song that I did was called Can't Say Goodbye, and it's about like him being torn between, you know, the streets and where he wants, you know, where he wants to go. Like, I should be focusing on getting Grammys, but I'm still, you know, hanging out with my homeboys or in this spot. So I wanted to just make something that was really true to his story and his growth. And because I'm from LA, it's a lot easier because I know Snoop's story, and because my aunt was there, like, and I was a huge Snoop fan, so I kind of had already some perspective. But then being able to talk with him and ask those hard questions, or maybe some, you know, I don't know other people's process, but some people might not want to know what's happening at home, but I do. You know, I want to know how this certain situation made you feel when you were stuck here and when you were going through this. How did you come out, you know?
There's an authenticity, obviously, that comes with people sharing their truth and being willing to talk about it. When they're giving that to you, and you are then going to give words back to interpret what they're saying, can you explain that a little bit more once somebody actually gives you that story, and then how you're able to interpret that and give it back to somebody?
Yeah, I think, you know, like I was saying earlier, it's not a one-day thing. A lot of the times, and I'm very grateful to be able to be let in like this, it's prolonged interaction or constant exposure to a person, and so it's really getting to know them and digest what they've been through, who's around them, their different moods, you know. And then, you know, a lot of times seeing things or hearing things that maybe, you know, the average person wouldn't hear, or they wouldn't tell, like, you know, a journalist or an interviewer, and just being trusted with that information and trusted to like convey it in a way that reflects how they feel, but doesn't leave them like super vulnerable or open to scrutiny, you know?
Yeah.
So, but it just takes time, you know, just to get to know a person. I really try, if I'm afforded the opportunity, which most of my placements have come from having relationships with these people. If I'm afforded the time to build the relationship, then I can create music that fully encompasses just our time together, our interaction. But outside of that, if I did have another placement or anything, it was always like happenstance, just this random thing that happened, you know.
So when you're working with a lot of people over a period of time, there obviously comes a time when you're like, I think I want to be writing these for myself, right? And I know you'd released a couple of things, but tell us about your album that you put out a couple of years ago, 7 Days in Atlanta, because everything you'd done up until then, I'm guessing, prepared you to go do that. And you did 7 days in Atlanta, right?
Yeah. So 7 Days in Atlanta is a part of a series. It's like a docu-series with music, but I just always thought that, like, especially in the age we're in now and the way people consume music, they want it in real time. And I feel like, you know, you can work on an album, and because I have so many ideas all the time, I'm like, what if we just worked on a project for a week in a different city or country or, you know, whatever, and then let that experience just fully immerse ourselves in the music for a week and let that be the album, you know? So with 7 days in Atlanta, I went to Atlanta for a week. I ain't gonna lie, I was kind of like going through some things. I was just trying to figure out my life, I guess, personally in my mind, and where I wanted to progress with the music. Definitely trying to find my voice as an artist. And so I called up a close collaborator, longtime collaborator and close friend of mine, C. Gutta, and we just locked in his studio for a week. We did like 14 songs in a week, and then 7 of them went on 7 days in Atlanta.
So it's kind of like, well, 7 songs, not quite an album, but big.
It's an EP, 7 songs in 7 days, one song a day.
Right. Since then, you've started releasing music more as you're making it, right, as singles.
Yeah, well, we did 2 projects this year, and then like, yeah, a couple of singles. Did Oh Na Na and Get Loud for Me. So in 2018, I was kind of just still doing the 7 days thing, because I have 3 more 7 days projects. One that I did in Philly, one that I did in Denver, and one that I did in Belize.
Oh, so these are all recorded. You just haven't put them out yet.
Yeah. So, because the idea is for it to come out with the visuals, you know.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Because there's so many things have to line up when you're releasing music. So many. You've got to have the promotion lined up, the visuals lined up. If you're making videos or whatever that is. How much time do you spend on that stuff? How involved are you in that? Are you directing stuff? Are you producing stuff? Do you have a team helping you?
Yeah, I have a team. I have my team. I have my company, the GZL company, which stands for Grace, Zeal, and Leverage. And I kind of just oversee everything and kind of trust everyone's expertise. And what we've been really just trying to fine tune what a successful rollout looks like for Gizzle. Like we've seen success in different areas and different parts, and so now it's like being able to combine everything that we've learned and have all our efforts be concerted, and so that each time it continues to grow in terms of the exposure and the reach, you know, of each project.
Whenever I talk to artists, the one thing that they all have in common is they all say they want to be heard.
Yes.
And as we can hear now, just even here, cutting through the chatter, there's so much music being made and so much music being released. How do you cut through the chatter? You talked about the single that you had, Get Loud for Me, which that cut through, right?
Yeah, it did.
How? What was so special about that got people's attention?
I think there was a lot of things at play. I think right time, the energy of the record itself, and because it's such high energy and it kind of evokes you to move and get out there. Around that time, originally the first spot that it was a Bose ad, and which coincidentally was also an NFL ad, and at that time you were witnessing, you know, a lot of NFL players be silenced for you know, their position and their opinions, and ironically there's this song that's just telling people to get loud. And so I think that and the amazing support from TV and film, it was just, it just caught on really fast.
There's a certain irony, obviously, in the fact that song was used that way.
Yeah.
You talk about TV and film. How important is that to an artist such as yourself to have your music placed where people, well, number one, you get paid.
Yeah,
which is important, so like, you can make more music.
It's like free promo, paid promo for you.
Right.
I'm all about that. I mean, that makes perfect sense to
me. Right.
So
what kind of impact does that have, though? I mean, you mentioned an ad, you mentioned the NFL, but I think that song has had like 25, 30 placements in different places. So number one, you've got some money coming in, but number two, people are hearing you.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, the more eyes and ears on you, the better. I know, like you said, like every other artist, if you decide to get out here, you're not trying to make music just for your friends and your family. You want everybody to hear it, and you want to hopefully affect change. I don't think that TV and film is the only resource that you should be using, but it's definitely a great help if you could get those to align. At the end of the day, I just want to be able to catch the attention of the listener and be like, hey, what's that? All right, cool. Is there more? Cool. Oh, I like this. And then, and hopefully that converts to fans forever,
So you're an artist, but you're also a businesswoman.
Yes.
How do those two sides of you coexist?
They're coexisting well right now. Not so much at first. I find like, you're using two different sides of your brain with business and creativity. And for me, it's like, I'm at a point where I want to creatively do business. You know what I'm saying? I want to creatively do business, and then I also want to, I want my creativity to also help expand upon that creative business. And so I'm learning a lot. I'm just on the ground. I'm in the field, using every opportunity as a learning curve, Will I say that there's growing pains? For sure, but I think for me it's important as a creative to constantly be challenging myself and to develop, and that's what I've been gaining by being so instrumental on the business side as well.
Can you give me an example how when those things collide, you might have to just sort of stop for a minute and take a look at what you're doing?
I mean, if I have to wake up and do like hella conference calls or tons of meetings and then go to the studio, like I'm like mentally exhausted, so sometimes it's just like finding that balance and relying on my team more so that they can push things forward while I'm trying to push things forward in the studio.
Have you found that with this success, record labels are interested in talking to you again?
I'm not interested in talking to record labels, so.
All right. So tell me.
They might be, but
I get it.
I think they know my expressed disinterest.
So tell me about the freedom that you have because you've kept it all in-house and you haven't gone out with record labels. Tell me what that means to you.
For me, my freedom means everything. It has since I was a child, and it was always something that was given to me, thankfully, by my parents, my tribe, who always encouraged my individuality. I feel like we're at a place in this day and age, artists shouldn't be expected to give up so much of themselves in turn for a check, that's gonna run out and then if they need a little bit more, they're gonna have a headache trying to do it. Or being able to come out and have all this success and make all this money for the label, and then for their next release be questioned about what they could put out, And I think you lose pieces of yourself. Of course, like to be an artist, every time you create, you're exposing a piece of your soul to the world. You're sharing that, you're sharing your story, and you're peeling back a layer each and every time. And to have that completely monetized and that be the sole basis on which things are shared with the world or not, I don't know that I find that completely fair. And for me, it was just not an option to not have the say-so in how I want to come across for the world, to the world, to not. Now, whether I drop an album every 2 years or not, I want that to be my choice. I feel like, I should be able to share my voice as often as possible or not, and have a say-so in that. So I don't dislike the major labels. I know that they have a place in this game. It wouldn't be this game without the majors, But I don't know that it's for me.
We were talking before we came out here a little bit about this, and I was telling you that I had a conversation with a record label president a couple of years ago, and I work with a lot of independent artists, and I said to him, so look, if I'm an independent artist and I've got a buzz going, and you guys are interested in me, why would I want to sign with a major record label? And he said, well, because if I make a choice, I can swing 100 people behind your project in every territory, in radio, in promo, in TV, whatever. To which my answer was, yeah, but what if you don't?
Exactly, and 95% of the artists on labels, they don't.
Right.
And I've been in this game for over a decade, so I've watched it go extremely well, so I know where it can go well. and I've watched it not, you know, and I've seen every situation in between, and it's fine. Like for me, whatever works for you, it's for you, because we're all on a different journey. We all have our path, and for some people, that's the place they need to be in. I never saw that for myself, and I don't want to put my destiny or my life in someone else's hands to that extent. You know, I want to drive the car.
I think you are. I think you're driving the car. So, and if you look at, you talked about, I've been doing this for a decade. It's actually a little more, but if you think about, you've been doing this a decade. How has your writing changed over that period of time? From what you were writing about, obviously, as a younger person, you know, we evolve, hopefully, as we get a little older.
It's to be debated.
But what do you write about now that's different from what you wrote about 5 or 8, 10 years ago?
You know, like, honestly, for me, I'm always kind of writing from my experience. I will say, though, as a younger creative, there was a lot more vulnerability that I had in my music then. But like I said, I've been working through those things. So if music is my therapy, I'm kind of releasing as I go. So for me now, I think I write from a more broader perspective, and then I try to include other people's situations or their viewpoints in mind to make it as relatable as possible. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I recently, like 2 years ago, I went back to not cussing in my music. And I started not cursing because when I was younger, I wanted my grandmother to listen to my music. And she used to be like, take that rap crap upstairs, you know? So I'm like, Grandma, you can listen to this. I'm not cussing. And I feel like going back to not using profanity in my music has helped me be more creative and push, you know, the envelope a little bit more as a creative. And honestly, it's still swaggy. You're not gonna miss it. You're gonna be like, dang, there's no cussing in that, because you're not losing any of the feeling. I think a lot of times, you know, profanity does sometimes give it a feeling, and it's an easy way to just express a raw emotion. But for me, it's just important to know that I can express myself beyond that without reverting to that.
Does it make you work harder? Because we were talking, as you just mentioned a little bit before we came out here, about this, and I was mentioning that, you know, I have a few friends who write and curse in their writing, and I have a few friends who are in comedy, and I know people who say that, you know, it's so much harder to, you know, not go for the easy laugh or the easy line, or, you know, the easy hook, I guess, that could be a curse word. So the challenge of doing that, does that make you a better writer?
I hope it does, but I feel like I'll come clean, because also I hate to re-record. So, and everybody knows clean versions of songs are terrible. Like when they go in, if you have to go in after the fact and make like the clean version, it just sucks. So I'd rather just get it right the first time and let everybody to be able to hear it. Like, you know, I want my audience to be 6 to 60, 9 to 90. And I want to be able to, I want to be heard by everybody. So I want everybody to be included in the Gizzle experience.
How important is social media to your output? How involved are you with that stuff?
I'm not as involved in social media as I should be, but I'm working on it every day, because I know in this day and age, it's how people communicate, it's how they receive information, and it has a place in what a career looks like now, a viable career looks like now within the music industry. So every day I'm just trying to work on my social media presence, my online presence, and connecting as much as possible. The gift of social media is that you have a chance to connect with millions of people at one time. You know, the curse is that it's millions of people at one time, and trying to get them to be invested in your journey. So that's something I definitely want to grow at. I do feel like I have a lane, and there are certain things that people follow me for, so I just want to continue to build upon that.
One of the things you were telling me as well before we came out here was that you're working on your live set.
Yes.
And because you're going to be performing live with musicians.
Yes.
With a band.
Yes.
Rather than just playing samples or loops or whatever. Tell us about that and why that's important to you.
I think for me, the best part of doing music is like making it in the studio and then performing it on stage. And I think with a band, it just comes alive. The live element, I don't know. Well, you performed before, so you know, like, it's just that feeling, and you have that support, and you don't have to be on time. There's no form. They're feeling you. You're feeling them, and I think people appreciate that more. And the recording definitely conveys a feeling to the listener initially, but when they see that record live, you know, it just gives them a whole nother feeling. And anytime, I fancy myself a good performer with the band or without, but I feel like with the band, you know, my show goes next level. So every time it's about giving the best performance that I can, making sure everyone's having a good time, and I think just having that live element is crucial.
I think we're going to try and throw it out to a couple of questions if anybody has any questions. I don't know if somebody can grab the microphone over here, and if anybody has questions, put your hands up. If you don't, we'll just keep talking, but I know there's people probably here who want to ask a question or two. So let me see if I can grab the mic. If not, yep, you got it?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. Anybody got a question? Please, raise your hand.
My guy.
Yo, test.
You need to turn it on.
Test.
Here, you can just come up here and use my mic, bro.
Yeah, how about that?
Test.
Oh, there you go.
We lit. Yo, Gizzle, I've been following you for a minute. You still be rocking with chords in them down there spaced out?
Oh yeah, always rocking with chords. Never not rocking with chords. That's a real thing right there. Nick, I thought you did your research. You didn't even bring up chords.
You know, I used to be on Slauson all the time. Trust me, I'm rocking with you.
I was looking at you. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, you already know.
I haven't got in with chords lately, but me and Ty were in, and him and Chords are back producing stuff together. I've been working on Ty's new album, of course. So I think Chords actually played on one of the joints that we did, but I haven't seen him in person. But love Chords, never not. That's my Belizean brother, my cousin, or something like that.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Vera Williams from New Orleans, Louisiana. Have you ever been to New Orleans, and what do you think about performing there with blues singers and jazz singers and mixing it up a little bit?
I have yet, Miss Vera, nice to meet you. I have yet to go to New Orleans, but I would love to come and perform, do the blues, the jazz, the brass band. I'm trying to walk the line. You know, I'm trying to do the thing. Okay, Miss Vera, well, thank you. We're gonna make it happen. That's a dream of mine, honestly. Yeah.
Let me ask a question before the next one. So backing up on that, where do you draw inspiration from today? I mean, obviously you started off as a rapper, and as your music has evolved, we were talking a little bit about how there's power chords in some of your music today. What are you drawing inspiration from today?
I try to draw inspiration from all genres. I think there's a lot to be learned and from each discipline. And so I listen to some of the new stuff, even though I don't always dig it, but I listen to it just so I'm not out of the loop. But then I also listen to a lot of old school music. So I'm listening to a lot of R&B, early R&B, a lot of Nina Simone, because Nina Simone, she spoke authentically from her voice. And so I listen to her to make sure that I'm speaking my truth, and not being scared to do that. Definitely collaborating more with producers from different genres, so rock producers, pop producers in general, and trying to create, this contrast in the music from my voice, which is really distinct.
Well, and expanding your voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just trying to, I'm honestly just always trying to be uncomfortable and think outside of the box and do what I can to grow. I've started taking piano last year. I'm not good at it yet, but something I'm working on. And yeah, just trying to grow musically.
Right. You have a question?
Well, hello? Okay. You kind of took my question.
Oh, I did? I'm sorry.
And living life, though. For me, I have to be living life, or I'm not inspired by anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I also wanted to ask you about doing anything internationally with international artists. Have you done any collaborations outside of the U.S.?
Oh yeah, I did a song with Delta Goodrum called Enough, and she's like Australia's sweetheart. It's like crazy. She's like Beyonce in Australia.
She's a major star.
Yeah, literally. Like I was there working with her. We did this song called Enough, and went out there, did really well. We did like Good Morning Australia. Like we worked, and then like the second day, people were calling me by my name just because I knew her in Australia, in the middle of Sydney. I've also worked with Boys Noise, who's a huge dance DJ and techno. Yeah, that's my guy. Alex is my guy. Boys Noise. I also worked with this production duo from Sweden named Jerami. We did a song called Know Better. And if you get a chance to go listen to it, it's actually really one of my favorite songs that I've written. So I try to work with everyone that I think is dope. Like if I dig the music, and you know, for me, if the message is positive, then I'll pretty much do it. I'm open to it.
I have a Nigerian artist here. Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yeah, you got to talk. Can we turn that mic up a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I was also asking because I work with a Nigerian American artist. I was wondering if you've done anything on the continent of Africa. Anybody out there?
I know Miku. What's up, bro? How are you? Yeah. I mean, if you say I work with Miku, yeah, I'll work with Miku. Yeah. It's been a while. How are you? That's what's up, man.
I just want to congratulate you and say I'm watching you. God bless your movement and keep going.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. Hey. Miko is around for some of the battle rapping. Miko,
oh, wow.
He knows the deal.
Any other questions here? Otherwise, I'll just keep going, I guess. Anybody else? All right. Well, if you do, put your hand up or shout out. We'll keep talking for a little while.
Okay.
Do you have any advice you would give to somebody who is trying to find their voice?
Yeah, I would give the advice of take time to really be with yourself, get to know yourself, get familiar with your internal voice. And there's a few voices that you need to learn to distinguish from. There's the voice here that you need to ignore completely, because that one's gonna always talk you out of everything, you know, and bring self-doubt. Then there's the voice here, and that's your heart space, and depending on whether it's open or not, then you can rely on that voice. So the goal is to open your heart space and do everything from your heart, from pure love, and you start to receive that guidance. And I think the third voice is here. Trust this one the first time, every single time, and I think life would be a lot easier.
So trust your gut, trust your instinct.
Yes, for sure. And that one first, but ignore this one.
Yeah.
Open this one. Build your trust with this one. Build that internal dialogue with this one, but never question this one. This is like grandma right here. This is grandma, okay? You listen to what grandmother says. You don't ask any questions, no matter how crazy it sounds. You just do it.
Do you only have one up here? I've got like about 100 in here.
I knew you did. I could see that. Like we was talking, I didn't know who I was talking to. I might have more than one.
Yeah.
But we want, you know.
How far ahead do you look? I mean, how in the moment are you? I mean, you're here with me right now, and I know you talked about you've got a show tomorrow, I think, or the weekend.
Yeah.
How far ahead do you look? Like when you're in the moment for the day, are you just there for the day, or are you thinking about the other things that you have to do, like the Swedish guys you have to see in 2 months, or this guy you've got to go do a co-write with? How far ahead are you
I'm completely here right now.
Right.
I'm not thinking about anything else. I just want to focus on our conversation and what we do. And of course, we try to do a certain amount of planning and setting goals for things that we want to do. But I think the key is to just take each day one at a time and try to be as present as possible. I'm trying to keep my anxiety levels low. You know, if you get too anxious and too excited, I feel like you could think your way out of things. So I just try to stay focused on being present and, you know, staying centered and balanced, and so that each situation that I'm in or any opportunity that is presented to me, that I could bring my best version to it and, you know, hopefully make the best of it.
We've been hanging out a little bit with Gizzle. Does anybody else have a question before we say goodbye?
Is the hour up already? Oh, my God.
It's getting close.
Okay.
All right. And I'm Sharik, by the way. I've interviewed you before, like ASCAP on the red carpet. Me and Jay Tasha go back.
I remember that too. That was like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, that was
2
a
years,
while ago.
not last year. It was 2 years right after the women's panel, right?
Yep, exactly.
I remember.
Exactly.
Okay.
So speaking of women, so I also have a little sister who's an MC. She and one of her things is she's, you know, with all the, I hate to say, the Cardi B's and all of that going on and all the booty popping and the really provocative
She don't want to pop her booty.
No, she don't want her pop
Good
her
girl.
booty.
Let's clap for not popping your booty.
So
Unless you want to. If you
No.
want to pop it, pop it.
But it seems as though
No choice.
that's what's getting the attention. That's what's being glorified. So what do you say to female MCs who don't want to go that route but want to be more, you know, about the lyrics and the lyrical content?
I think no matter what it is, you know, not to be funny, booty popping or not, if it's authentic to you, that's what you have to do. There is more than enough room in the world for truth, and truth is subjective, and it's diverse. And so, even though she might not get, you know, that attention, she's gonna get the attention she deserves and what's for her, you know, because there's something for everybody. So I think it's more important. A guy told me one time, he said, just keep your eyes on your own feet, you know, so just keep that tunnel vision and focus on where you want to go. That's what I would tell your sister. And don't be too worried about what they're doing over here. You just focus on cultivating, you know, your voice and mastering your craft, and I think everything else follows. And be open to, you know, the way that the path might wind, because it's not like a straight trajectory. Like for me, when I first started doing music, I was rapping. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a battle rap, and I'm just gonna be the best rapper. Then I saw that contract. I'm like, hell no, I'm not signing that. What am I gonna do? And then I'm like, oh, well, you can write songs. So this became a vehicle for me to still do what I love and build that leverage that I needed and gain the knowledge that I needed to, you know, find my own voice and promote myself and be able to do the things that I'm doing now. So you have to be open. You know, there's your plan and there's God's plan, and we already know who got the best one.
Just to follow up on that. Oh, okay, please, over here. We've got somebody here.
Nah, man, it's a conversation. We're not freestyling up here, man. The style ain't free no more, baby. It's paid. Yeah.
My follow-up question along the lines of being a female artist, a woman artist, you know, I tend not to focus on that when I'm talking to people because I just see you as an artist. But clearly, you are impacted by who you are and how you grew up and how that, you know, how you interact in the world as a woman. How has that shifted in the last 10 years for you? How has the world you work in shifted?
I think for the world that I mean, it's still a very male-dominated industry, but I think all of the doubt and like the second guessing that used to come with, I'm gonna work with this woman, or and at that time I was a little girl, or you should work with this girl. You know, there's less of that. I think across the board, and you know, in life, we know even though it can be male dominated, but everybody knows women run the world. You know, like we make things happen. We connect the people. Who goes harder for you than your mom or your girlfriend or whoever at the time? It's just facts. So I think that now you see so many women in positions of power and demonstrating their expertise in high levels every single day. You know, it just removes this. The stigma is removed a little bit. There's still, you know, some people stuck in the old school or these old patterns of thinking, but I don't think that's the majority now. I think that things are based on ability, and that doesn't matter which gender you are. I think it's just your ability to get things done and to execute.
And do you feel that there has been a shift out there in the world that is taking more notice and accepting of that?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I mean, you can see it even though she didn't win, but even in the last presidential election, it's like, you know, that couldn't have happened 10 years ago.
Right.
You know?
Any other questions here for Gizzle before we wrap it up? I want to thank you, first of all. It's been great to meet you. I really appreciate having an opportunity to talk with you.
Well, this was very
different.
Nice. Nah, I really enjoyed it because, you know, I know that you're a talker and a thinker, and I feel like I'm a thinker and a talker. So sometimes, like, I just want to like map it all out in my head first and rehearse it. And I was just really happy that you made me feel comfortable to just be myself and kind of flow, and I appreciate you being yourself and
Thank you.
us just sharing space right now. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Now they're like, nah, we're good.
No, it's photo time. Thank you.
We're good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Cheers
guys.
all.
Happy Friday, everybody.